Welcome to 52 Miniatures. This video is sponsored by Corvus Belli. I'm going to take a look at how to start playing the game Infinity, together with my two friends Klara and Arvid, neither of whom have played Infinity before. Our goal is to play through a very first game and see what sticks out. So not a battle report, they're too fast to follow if you don't know the rules. More like a presentation of what your first game of Infinity could be like. We're going to base this around the absolute first starter box, Infinity Essentials. A video for those wondering what playing Infinity could be like when starting out. And is the starter set a good place to start? And I'll be painting up the minis in the box. For those of you not mightily interested in Infinity, on offer is some alternative painting shenanigans using oil washes for underpainting. Infinity is a sci-fi game set 185 years into the future. Humans have colonized parts of space, encountered aliens. AI and robotics is a big thing. There's no major galactic war, but no one likes each other much, so lots of clandestine special ops missions, espionage, small-scale fighting. You know, sneaking around in the space bushes with the knives out, up to no good. Everything is a bit Dune meets cyberpunk meets very polished sci-fi, and there's a distinct anime vibe going. The gameplay is based on skirmish-style tactics. That means moving miniatures around individually rather than in units. The Essentials starter box is a sort of excessively simplified introduction. There's everything one needs to play a mini-game. Miniatures, cardboard-type terrain, dice, and rules. I've played Infinity a few times in the past, can't remember many rules specifics. Honestly, my mind is a sieve with surprisingly big holes for wargame rules. But what I do remember is a pretty rules-heavy game. However, as Klara and Arvid never played the game at all, we thought we'd use this box and only what's inside this box. I mean, the full set of complete rules is free to download from Corvus Belli. We could use that. But as a concept for this video, we're sticking to what is only in the box. As if we're stuck on a distant deserted island with only this Essentials box in our hand. And, well, hopefully room service. Or island service, or whatever you'd call it. A regular game of Infinity requires roughly 10 to 15 miniatures. Here we have 3 each. 2 basic troops and 1 more elite. The 2 factions are Pan-Oceania and the JSA, the Japanese Secessionist Army. Pan-Oceania is the biggest power and faction in the game. The style kind of reminds me of Robocop and Judge Dredd, which is pretty cool. The JSA is a similar faction with a Bushido-inspired doctrine, samurai in space. What can go wrong? The miniatures included are 2 Kaisotu basic troops and a Shikami for the JSA, 2 Fusiliers and an ORC or Orc troop for Pan-Oceania. The fact that there is terrain in the box is very important. Infinity as a game kind of does not work well without terrain. For many, crafting their own terrain can be an ordeal. Buying terrain is an extra cost. So I mean, they couldn't have done this any other way really, but I'm still glad that they did. Included is also a paper playing mat. It's naturally smaller than the 4x4 foot that a larger game of Infinity plays on, but gives a good representation of the playable area we're dealing with. Me, Arvid, and Klara assemble all the miniatures, and with some texture paste on the bases, everything was looking pretty good and ready to paint. I like doing the painting before gameplay, but in reality I don't think one should have to paint everything just to start testing a game out. It can be something you do bit after bit, or frankly, not at all if you don't really want to. Whatever works for each and all. I made up my mind to do a simple desert theme. The theme of the starter box is desert warfare, so to me it makes sense that the minis wear sort of khaki. I mean, in fake reality, they have all kinds of radar, homing beacons, electronic camouflage, holographic representations of reality and whatever can be imagined in a sci-fi setting, and could probably be screaming pink for all that matters. But I'm a traditionalist when it comes to desert warfare, and you can't be going about doing it without some decent light brown fatigues. Well, maybe if you're in full Bedouin outfit, but that's not the style of these minis, unfortunately. The painting process became one of the most elaborate searches for a fast workflow since, well, last time I tried. I'm not going to go into all the details because it will scare off even the most dedicated hobbyist, but there is a fundamental little painting trick. Well, it's not even a trick, it's a concept is a better word that I want to share. For those of you new to painting, this might seem in-depth. If it does, check out one of my Get Started Painting videos for Infinity. Now, quite recently I painted a huge miniature ship. To get a varied yet swift wood color happening, I tried an underpainting technique with a purple oil wash. Something I now want to try on miniatures. Okay, so this is the workflow. A zenithal prime, white sprayed from above over a brown primer. Then a dry brush of white to catch all the raised areas and edges, as well as adding a slight texture. I then mix an oil wash of purple and a bit of dark red, almost burgundy, about 1 time oil paint to 10 times odorless white spirit. I cover the miniature rather delicately, avoiding some larger raised areas completely. Oh, and there might have been varnish involved before the oil wash. Remember what I said about the sieve? Anyway, after the oil wash had set, 20 minutes has probably passed, I go back with a brush and some Q-tips, moistened in white spirit, and clean up excess oil wash. Trying to even out puddles, create some nice gradients, clean off the protruding bits a little, yet retain the dark reddish purple in all the crevices. I then spray over this with a light brown contrast paint. Was there varnish again involved? I really should take notes. Anyway, a contrast paint is slightly transparent, and so the purple in the recesses gets filtered into more of a dark brown, but not covered completely. I'm still working on the best way to get this type of technique going. The result was a bit flatter than I would have wanted. I think a more transparent paint than the brown contrast paint would be better. The zenithal prime was maybe unnecessary, but still, with some refinement, it's a pretty good start on something like an Infinity miniature, getting all those little details shaded and some volume and contrast going, yet in a tasteful manner. Mostly, I think it's fun to experiment with different styles of painting. There's a lot of different techniques out there, folks. Unfortunately, because of this previous statement, the rest of the paint job derailed from its original swift course. I painted up some of the details, interested in testing the army painter's historical paint. I figured the World War II army-style colors would suit my sun-bleached sci-fi vibe. But after getting most of the way, I got bored. Not with the paint, it's just the general state of affairs. I tried to paint minis just to get them good enough to play some games with, and then I get sidetracked because I get bored. I decided to highlight, or somewhat stain, if you will, with oil paints. I know, again. Not oil washes this time, but actually painting with oil paints. I've got a past video explaining the process, but in short, the paint is mixed with white spirit to thin out the thick oil paint. For application, I used 2 brushes, one brush to add the paint, let's call it a wet brush, and then a dry brush to smudge the paint, trying to create smooth gradients and stuff. I'm doing all this to try and add a sun-bleached vibe, desaturating my paints with white, painting on a sort of highlights, but of the blurry persuasion. In the end, the first underpainting and this last oil paints are attempts at getting places swiftly with unconventional techniques. I think there's good potential here, but as with all things, they need practice. And in the end, is it the technique that is swift, or is it getting comfortable and happy with any technique that is the road to getting minis on the table swifter? Regardless, the minis got painted and it's time to play a game. As I said earlier, this is the scenario. We're playing this as beginners who's only just bought the Essentials box. We've not read the rules before now. This is our first game. We're only using what is provided in the box. As if it were a board game or similar. We're not looking elsewhere for help with the rules or nothing. Desert Island, remember? But a hint at how simplified this is, we've got 9 pages of rules compared to the 190 of the full rulebook. The booklet has some rudimentary explanations of the rules, as well as an example gameplay sequence to show how to use these rules. As we are beginners, please expect that we get things wrong. We're not here for the rules expertise, we're demonstrating the situation of what playing Infinity for the first time might be like. The battle mat is 6 inch by 22 inch, and we set up on either end. I recommend some blue tack under the mat to keep it in place during gameplay. Klara is playing Pan-Oceania, and I'm playing JSA. First, we decide, without telling the opponent, which one of our troops is the lieutenant. This would be the equivalent of a general or something. We both pick one of our basic troops. Infinity uses d20s, and you want to roll as low as possible, by the way. Our first dice roll is to decide who gets to go first. Sort of. Now, to decide who wins this roll, we're supposed to roll as high as possible, yet under our lieutenant's WIP attribute, short for willpower. I roll the highest, a 9, yet still under the 12 of the willpower of my lieutenant. What use this lieutenant is not further explained in the booklet. And now I get a choice, to keep initiative or to keep deployment. Keeping initiative means I get to choose who goes first. And keeping deployment means I get to choose who deploys first and what deployment zone to use. Whatever one I pick, the leftover choice goes to the opponent. So right off the bat, things are kind of clear that this game builds up on a lot of nuances. It's not just I go first, end of story. I decide to keep the initiative, but my choice is for Klara to go first. Klara thus gets to keep deployment and decides to deploy on her side of the table and to deploy first. Did you get that sequence? Our deployment zones for this scenario is a quarter of the mat on respective sides. Klara has to place her troops within that zone. She places her miniatures hiding behind things because we've figured out that this is wise in a game of Infinity. The general idea seems to be that you can shoot very far, and if you hit something, it goes down fast. So you want to hide to survive. When a mini touches a piece of terrain, it's in cover. Full cover, like behind a big thing, means you can't see or be seen. Partial cover means you get a cover bonus if someone shoots at you. I follow suit with my deployment. We then place an order token, like an activation token, next to each unit. I like the word order better, actually, than activation. 1 token per unit. Now, this is kind of where we stumble upon one of the first discrepancies between the how to get started rules and how I presume the full rules of Infinity are explained. I'm going to surmise some important discrepancies at the end. For now, we'll still just keep playing like noobs. The token, the order, represent the possibility to do 2 short skills. The ones we have to choose from are move, BS attack, that's not bullshit, but ballistic, I believe, and dodge. So 1 token can be used to move, then move again, or move and then shoot, or to shoot twice. You get it. Klara is first to go and moves all of her troops closer towards me, making sure they end their double moves behind cover. I then follow suit when it's my turn. I, however, move one of my troops into a position to shoot at Klara, now that she's visible and not hiding behind big things. And now there's a lot to explain. First off, yes, I get to shoot at Klara. On the base of the mini are some markings that essentially show a 180-degree arc that represents line of sight. I need to place my miniature so that what I want to shoot at is within that arc. Different weapons have different statistics. In general, they all seem to shoot very far. But different bonuses and penalties happen depending on distances. They also have a B rating. This is short for burst and represents the number of attacks my weapon has. I have 3. I can choose to distribute these bursts on anything visible within my line of sight. So all on 1 enemy or 1 burst on 3 different enemies. What also happens is that in Infinity there is something called automatic reaction order, or ARO for short. Effectively, it means that when an enemy activates and is visible to you, you can react to that with an order of your own. So Klara gets to shoot back even though it's my turn, which is pretty cool. She does, however, get her bursts reduced to 1 because the rules say so. For me to hit, I get a +3 to my Keiutsu's ballistic skill of 12 because of the short range I need to shoot. Yet Klara is behind cover, reducing things by 3, and so we're back at 12. I roll 3 dice, 1 for each burst. I've decided to stick them all in the same trooper, the big orc unit. I, however, miss all rolls. None are under 12. Klara then uses her R roll and shoots back. She rolls 1 dice for her Fusilier and 1 for the Orc as they have different ballistic skills. 1 miss and 1 hit. To determine if this hit injures me, I need to add my unit's specific armor attribute, my Keisutu has 1, add the attacker's weapon's PS number, that's possibility of survival, 7 in this case, as well as any cover modifications, a +3 as I'm behind partial cover. And so I need to roll under 11 to not get damaged by this hit. But I don't, I roll 14. My trooper takes a hit and goes down as its vitality stat is 1. Vitality is health or wounds, basically. In theory, this renders me unconscious. Another hit and I would be dead. I guess this means in expanded rules I could be healed out of unconsciousness. But that's not introduced for us in this set of rules. And so what actually happened here is that I jumped out of cover, shot at my enemy, but my enemy gets to react even though it's not their turn, and guns me down. I like that kind of immersive gameplay. And the rest of the game kind of continues in a similar manner. Klara gathers all her troops in the middle, guns ready, and I try my best to run and gun it. I attempt to run up with my samurai-looking shikami. It has a cool sword, and so I figured I could chop some heads off. But no close combat rule situations were described in the rule booklet, so I fired instead. But I only got one hit in on the orc unit that unfortunately has 2 wounds or vitality points, if you will. Klara could then do her arrow shooting, and of course 2 hits went in and my brave samurai went down. And so I thought, well, at least I can take down that big orc unit before I'm wiped off the mat. But that did of course not happen, as Klara took me down again. My 3 troopers unconscious and her 3 still standing. And that, my friends, is what playing the Essentials box can be like. The great thing about playing like this, instead of just reading a rules set and trying to explain what Infinity is about, is we now have 3 different experiences of what it's like to start playing Infinity. But it's going to be difficult to summarize the game itself and the starter box separately, as the Essentials box simplified setting affects gameplay. The general feeling is that all 3 of us have not played a game like this one before. In a world with a lot of games, with quite a lot of very similar rule sets, Infinity is its own game. The rules appear complex even in the short booklet. We feel it's somewhat down to how the rules are written, the language, if you may. This tends to be the way with games played competitively. No stone is left unturned. But this means the learning curve is heavy because of having to turn over all the stones. Yet, as with all games, once you get the rules, they seem rather easy to grasp in retrospect. Regarding the box itself, we have different opinions. I miss things. I think certain aspects have been oversimplified and not explained enough. The discrepancies. An example is the order tokens. In the game we played, I got 3 orders, 1 per unit. The booklet explains a game scenario that shows 1 order being used on each trooper. So we as beginners think this is how one should play. But the orders can be put in a pool and actually be used on the same trooper, activating 1 unit several times until I run out of my orders. This is something that very much alters gameplay and feels like a big part of the game, even for a beginner. Similarly with RO, the automatic response order, the booklet playthrough examples highlights shooting as an RO. So we just use that skill, but an RO could also be other skills, like dodging, for example. Makes sense and is fun gameplay. Someone tries to shoot you and you obviously jump for cover. You try to dodge the shot as a response. Again, showing examples of the reactive gameplay in Infinity that sets it apart from other games. I think this should be highlighted in the starter set, as it might affect if people like the game or not when trying it out for the first time. Klara, on the other hand, said, no, this is just enough rules to get a taste of the game. Any more would be overwhelming. The basic aspects are shown, we get to test them, and if you like this game, you'll probably start looking at the heavy rule set. Arvid, who kept feeding us the rules as situations appeared, thus had to read the rules a lot. Wondered if maybe the rules in the booklet should be written in a, what should we call it, not in the same manner as rules are described in the full rulebook. The intricate language is probably there to avoid misunderstandings in a competition environment, but in a beginner's rule booklet, a more streamlined user-friendly language could be considered. A sentence like, dodge allows the user to move up to 2 inches during the 5.1 effects step of the order expenditure sequence if the roll is successful, can be challenging to grasp. Regarding the Essentials box, we all agree that for the money, it's well worth it if you want to dip your toes in Infinity. If you split the box with your opponent, it's going to cost you about $25. You get 3 miniatures each to paint and everything you need to play a small game, including terrain. By the way, great thinking, Corvus Belli, for adding 2 rule pamphlets in the box, 1 for each player. Small things like that matter. I think the consensus is yes, this is a good place to start. Maybe after the first game, start looking through the full free rulebook. Be aware that the quick start rules are excessively filtered. Now, you also get a good first look at cool Infinity miniatures and how it is to assemble and paint them, if that kind of stuff is something that is important to you when you want to get into a new game. In terms of understanding the rules, I find that the Infinity, what they call AI, her name is Sibylla, it's more like, well, does anyone remember Ask Jeeves? It says something about my age. Anyway, you can ask Sibylla anything Infinity related. Like, what does B in weapon stats mean? And Sibylla will tell you that it means burst. Great help when decoding the rulebook. And the ecosystem here is that there is in fact a box after Essentials. The current one is called Sandtrap. This is indeed the proper getting started to play Infinity box. The smart thing is that everything that comes in the Essentials works with Sandtrap. The miniatures are in the same factions and the terrain is themed in the same manner. And after that there are Beyond boxes expanding on Sandtrap. And so yes, we think the Essentials is a good place to start playing Infinity if you're just plain curious. What is this game? Well, here's a sneak peek. If you really want to get into Infinity, like my life goal for the next year is to play this game, then I'd probably jump into a larger box or something. And don't forget, the rules and Army Builder are free. I had a lot of fun with Arvid and Klara. That, in the end, is the big thing, right? I also painted a bunch of cool-looking sci-fi soldiers. Also a big thing I like. So I had fun. I'm still excited about Infinity. Personally, I think the gameplay is alluring. And I kind of feel like I should just start painting a faction I think is cool and slowly amass an army. Here's looking at you, Aleph. Or maybe Adriana. Or Hakislam. Oh dear. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, my Patreon is what keeps me being able to make these videos. Patrons get access to a private Discord, live stream VODs, and behind-the-scenes stuff. The occasional giveaways, but mostly eternal glory. Oh, and if you want to catch me live, I stream on Twitch nowadays, in case you missed. Thanks to Arvid and Klara for joining me once more. Thank you for watching. Bye.